Welcome to Network Africa. Coming up on the program, after 9 arrests since the 18th of last month, Uganda opposition leader Kizza Besigye fails to challenge President Museveni over the just concluded elections. Then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu goes into details about Israel's interest in helping Africa. But what's in it for Israel? And later, without surprise, the South African President, Mr. Jacob Zuma, survives a vote of no confidence. This is the second attempt by the opposition in 1 year. Thanks a lot for staying tuned to Channels Television. Welcome to the midweek edition of Network Africa with me, Cynthia Are. After spending several weeks doing a lot of talk, Uganda opposition leader Mr. Kizza Besigye has opted out of doing the walk. He has backed down from challenging President Yoweri Museveni over his victory in the presidential elections last week. Mr. Besigye has failed to meet a 10-day deadline to launch a legal challenge against the president, and lawyers representing Mr. Besigye and his Forum for Democratic Change party say he couldn't file papers in court because police have blocked him from leaving his home. Unlike Mr. Besigye, another opposition candidate, Ama Mbabazi, who came third in the poll, has managed to submit his petition calling for the annulment of the election. Now, staying in Uganda, the East African country and Tanzania are planning to build a pipeline from Ugandan oil fields to the Tanzanian coast. This is a move that could strike a huge blow to Kenyan pipeline plans. However, the statement issued after Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni and his Tanzanian counterpart met on Tuesday did not mention the fate of the Kenyan oil export pipeline plan. Uganda, which is yet to start oil production, raised the possibility of a Tanzanian pipeline route that was last year. One of the French oil firms developing Uganda's fields had raised security concerns about the Kenyan route. That's because a Kenyan pipeline could run near Somalia, from where militants have launched attacks on Kenya. But industry officials have also said connecting Kenyan fields, which are also yet to start production with those in Uganda, would make the pipeline project cheaper as costs would be shared. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, has announced the formation of a new Israel-Africa Knesset caucus and confirmed that he will be traveling to the continent this summer. The Jerusalem Post has reported that, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, who will be the first sitting Israeli Prime Minister to visit Africa since Yitzhak Shamir back in 1987, is set to arrive in Uganda and Kenya around the 40th anniversary of Operation Entebbe, when Israeli commandos rescued over 100 hostages held by pro-Palestinian terrorists in Uganda's Entebbe airport. The announcement was made during a Knesset meeting that was attended by 13 African ambassadors, 5 honorary consuls, and a number of Israeli lawmakers. Here's an excerpt of the announcement made by Prime Minister Netanyahu. He says, Israel is coming back to Africa. Africa is coming back to Israel. It's happening in a big way. It's happening now, but it should have happened a long time ago. It's happening now because it's so clear that this is good for Africa and it's good for Israel. We face a multitude of challenges and opportunities. Now, here's a look at what the Israel-Africa agenda would be like. Israel is planning to help African countries regarding the war on terror. It's also looking to help Africa regarding the development of science and technology. Israel is also looking to help in the voting pattern of the African Union, as well as the agriculture development. Israel is also looking to help in the various sectors, including tourism, investment, cyber development, and water irrigation. Now, speaking of interests in Africa, the Turkish president, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has also expressed Turkey's interest in West Africa specifically. According to President Erdogan, Turkey is ready to help fight the growing threat of terrorism in West Africa under a new strategic partnership that aims to boost trade and other ties with the continent. Addressing members of Ghana's parliament during a two-day visit to Accra, Mr. Erdogan explained that Turkey is currently at a good place to help African countries combat terrorism. He emphasized that Turkey has a vast experience in combating terrorism and has a robust understanding of the countries suffering at the hands of terrorism. President Erdogan is of the opinion that developing countries in Africa need to push harder for reforms of the United Nations Security Council to make it more responsive to Africa's needs in times of crisis, adding that the body, that's the United Nations Security Council, currently constituted only serves the interests of a few elite countries. Well, I believe that Mr. David Otto, who is a security expert, will be joining us shortly on the program to talk about these new interests, especially regarding Turkey and Israel in Africa. Mr. David Otto, thank you for joining us on Network Africa.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, I just have to start. Did you have raised eyebrows like myself when you saw these events unfolding this week? First of all, we saw what happened yesterday between the president of Egypt and his counterparts in Japan, and now we're seeing that Israel is talking about more interest in Africa and also Turkey, and they're all blowing their own trumpets here, talking about their expertise. Is there an ulterior motive?
I mean, it's interesting because we've always spoken about the issue of the scramble for Africa. And as we all know, this is something which has been happening for a very long time. I mean, talking about the scramble for Africa in the 19th and 18th century. So this is not new. You know, we know that the next conflict in the next 20 years in the world will be caused by a kind of limited natural resources. And most of those natural resources are present in Africa. So we are not surprised by the surge, you know, in Western states, you know, coming to Africa. I mean, in 2014, we had the United States for the first time inviting about 50 African states, you know, just because, you know, of the interest that these Western powers have in Africa. So I'm actually not really surprised by the upsurge of Western states, you know, including Turkey, including Israel, because, you know, they know that, you know, Africa is going to be the next place to be, and they need to have a position, you know, in Africa at the moment. But, you know, what our leaders have to be very careful is, you know, for them to be able to understand their comparative advantage, because these nations are not just coming for the benefit of Africa, they are coming for their own benefit. So we have to be very careful about their approaches. Speaking
of approach here, some analysts are also saying that, you know, these countries like Turkey and Israel are, you know, dangling the carrot. By that I mean that they're telling the African countries and African leaders what they want to hear. So what is the safest approach to take in order to avoid long-term consequences on our part?
The safest approach is always to make sure that, you know, you understand the motives, and that, you know, national interest, you know, whether it's going to be Ghana or any African state or Nigeria, national interest has to surpass international interest, you know, because what African governments have to know is that each and every of these states which is coming, whether it's, as you said, whether it's Israel or it's Turkey coming to Africa, you know, they're coming there for their own interest. So what governments have to make sure is that, you know, the national interest of their state is put before the interest of these states which are coming, because they are not coming to help Africa. All they're coming to do is to get the natural resources that Africa has. And this is something which has been happening for years upon years. So we have to be very careful. I mean, we're talking about the slowdown in China. We're talking about the decline in some commodities now. So this is an opportunity for most of the Western states, including Israel and Turkey, you know, to come into Africa, because they know that, you know, there are alternative areas of investment that African governments are looking at. And what they're trying to do is to position themselves, in order to outsmart countries like China. But whether it is China, whether it is the United States, whether it is Israel or Turkey, African governments have to be very, very careful in the way we accept Western nations into our countries.
Now, Mr. Otto, this is also the part where it gets a bit tricky. What most African countries are facing right now is the issue of terrorism. And
yes.
Based on what the president of Turkey and the president of Israel have been saying, we've seen that they have a robust experience in handling situations like this. So we do need their help. But at the same time, I also understand what you're saying. We also need to, proceed with caution because of the hidden agenda. I use that term for lack of a better one at the moment. But the point is, we do need this assistance. So what is the best way to embrace this opportunity to fight terrorism, which is staring us in the face, and also protect our own interest?
I mean, the best way to approach these issues is to look at it from two perspectives. One of them is, whether our African countries want to invest in conflict or whether we want to invest in solutions. Countries like Israel, Turkey, the United States of America, all these Western countries that are coming into Africa to solve our problems, they have their own problems that they haven't solved.
Yes.
So I don't see any logical reason why Israel or Turkey would come to solve the problem of Nigeria or come to solve the problem of Ghana or any African country when they have their own problems. That is the first step to understand. And secondly, if you look at the amount of interest that African nations have shown in purchasing arms, and from which countries? You're looking at China, you're looking at the United States of America, you're looking at Britain, you're looking at the United Kingdom, and also you're looking at Russia. So all these countries, have come to Africa with the supposition that they are coming to help us to tackle terrorism. But what they are coming for is to sell us conflict solutions rather than sell us solutions that would be experienced within the communities. So they are not actually helping Africa in a way. What they're doing is, they are instead taking from Africa what we should instead be guarding for ourselves. So they are not coming to solve any problems, in my opinion. Yes, they may bring us, some intelligence-based analysis or help us to tackle those issues. But what do they get in return? And what do we get in return? More conflict. Look at the areas where AFRICOM has been operating in. If you look at countries like Mali, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, Somalia, Nigeria, Cameroon, South Sudan, all these countries where AFRICOM has been operating in have seen an increase in terrorist attacks, before they came into those areas. So what does that tell you? Does it tell you that we need more arms, or does it tell you that we need more solution? In my opinion, what happens is, African countries are more interested in buying arms, actually looking at solutions that will solve the underlying issues.
My final question, Mr. Otto, I remember the last time we spoke, you were more comfortable about the suggestion of engaging in dialogue with terrorists here, because that you were talking about military activity. We've not seen much results in that. So are you comfortable with the direction in which we're heading right now, seeing that there's an appearance of more collaborative effort? Are we heading in the right direction regarding the war against terror, based on what you're seeing unfold right now?
I mean, we're heading in the right direction, but we always say work has to be done. And, for the condition that we have now, the most focus should be looking at solutions that, would deal with this problem from the underlying issues. Even if it means, to have, when we say that, we're talking about dialogue, what we're saying is, in the alternative, in place of killing innocent people, in place of using military strategy, which has never ever defeated any terrorist organization, the focus should be on looking at the underlying causes of this problem, maybe have a mediation, maybe have a dialogue. It is very difficult for people who've lost loved ones to accept that, we should have a dialogue. But it is always better if you've not lost someone. If you've lost someone in the war, it is worse for you. But, if you've not lost someone, you don't want to lose someone in the war. So it's always better for us to look at solutions, which at the end of the day will be better off than, using military strategy. I believe still that, dialogue and mediation will be the way forward.
Well, counterterrorism expert and organized crime expert, Mr. David Otto, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Still to come on Network Africa, activists tried to block police attempts to demolish Calais jungle as evacuation continues in the northern French migrant camp.